Okay, so let's get started here. So this is the third Getting Started with Tiller session, and we're going to talk all about categories today. This is part of a series of 6 different sessions that each cover a different Getting Started topic, and they all happen at this time every week. So if you can't make it to a future session or you missed a previous one, don't worry. We have a recording of each one, and those are going to be added to the community posts that we have. As I mentioned, today's session is all about categories, which are a key component of being able to understand your money and set budgets with Tiller. So throughout the session today, please feel free to ask questions using the Q&A feature in Zoom. And then at the end, we'll go ahead and answer those live. And for those who aren't viewing live, we're going to have all of the questions and answers in a text format available in the follow-up resources that we send out. So as I mentioned, this is series 3 in a series of 6. You can see a full breakdown of the upcoming sessions that we have here. So next week, we're going to do a deep dive into budgeting and using the different debt repayment and savings features that we've got built into Tiller. Last week, we looked at understanding the foundation template. So again, for the previous ones, these are already uploaded in the community, and we'll update these as the sessions continue. So for today, we're going to focus on how categories function in the foundation sheet and making sure that you feel comfortable and confident categorizing your transactions. So we'll talk default categories, how to add new groups and new categories using the auto categorization function, and then kind of getting a view of how categorizing your data really helps you to visualize your financial life. So zooming out for a second before we dive into the demo and looking at the foundation template, let's talk about what Tiller is all about. So Tiller is your financial life in a spreadsheet, automatically updated each day. Tiller is a financial tool that makes managing your money in a spreadsheet fast and easy by automating your daily transactions and balances into Google Sheets or Excel. And we really believe that spreadsheets are the best way to get in tune with your money because they are flexible, collaborative, and incredibly customizable. And so that kind of brings us into our philosophies around categorizing your transactions. So we really believe that manually categorizing your spending is important and a big part of understanding your money. And so for that reason, Tiller does not automatically categorize transactions by default. Instead, we hand that power over to you to create your own categories and give you the tools to automate it to make it faster, but still ultimately giving you that control. We believe that manually categorizing your spending is going to help you to build a clearer picture of where your money is going. And if you've tried other budgeting tools, you might have noticed that a lot of them will automatically assign categories. And that oftentimes falls short of what you're looking to do because it's really impossible for anyone other than you to understand the intent behind purchases that you make. So, for example, if you spent $50 at a coffee shop, a lot of apps would simply pop that right into the restaurants category. But maybe part of the purchase was actually a gift for somebody, or you were buying a new tool for your kitchen and you wanted to break down those categories differently. So Tiller never wants to assume anything about the intention behind your purchases. And so we hand that control over to you. So you're the one deciding how things are classified in a way that makes sense for your money and your budgets. So to sum it up, here's why we take this different approach to categorization. So first of all, it's quick. Even though it's manual, you can categorize your spending in just a couple of minutes, a couple of times a week, and it takes up less than 1% of your time. It also is really important for building awareness. So you're going to know exactly what you spent and where you spent it with each transaction, and you get much more engagement with your money and understanding your cash flows that way. It also aligns your spending with your intent. So, as I previously mentioned, we're never going to assume to know your intent behind a purchase, and we're always going to give that power to you. And then finally, it's just more accurate. When you're doing it yourself, you're always going to get it right. And so, again, we want your data to be as clear as possible so that you understand where your money's going. So now we can move into the demo. And so I'll head into my foundation template here. So this is my test template. I've got a bunch of manually imported test data in here that we can play around with. And you'll notice that for the most part, I don't have anything categorized. And so you can see here that the categories column in my transaction sheet is blank. And when I come into my spending trends, that's going to look much the same. So it's going to show me that I need to categorize all of my data. There's of a ton of transactions here that are not categorized. And for that reason, you'll see that things like income, expenses, and cash flow are all at zero as well because they haven't yet been categorized. And so that really kind of highlights the importance of the categorization process because this is really what populates your reports and all of these different sheets with the data on your spending trends and helping you to understand where your money's going. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the categories sheet here. And these are our default categories, right? So these are going to come pre-populated into your spreadsheets. And so you'll be able to take a look and make adjustments to this as needed. So what you can see here is that we have discretionary, financial, income, living, other, and transfer as our default groups. You can think of a group as sort of a broader bucket that your categories will fall into. So categories are going to be the most granular that you get. They'll fall into those bigger groups. And then we also have types. And so type can be either expense, income, or transfer. Income and expense being obvious. And then transfer is going to be when you move an amount from one account to another. So you might see a plus in one account and a minus from another in your same transaction list. So we would just class that as a transfer. And I'll chat about that a little bit more going forward. So these are sort of the default categories that are built in. And if these look good to you, then you can definitely run with them. The first way that you can start to categorize transactions is simply by using this dropdown. So in each of the category cells, you're going to see the option to select from the dropdown whatever category applies. So if we're looking here, I see one for Chick-fil-A. I can select restaurant. I see one for Target. We can say that that's shopping, for example. We can come down here. We see, payments. So here is a good example of a transfer where we see Capital One and then it being negative in one account and then positive in another because that was a transfer. So we can set that up like this. So you can kind of go through manually. Obviously, when you're first getting started with Tiller, you're probably pulling in a month or two of data from your bank that won't be categorized. And so this would be a really difficult and time-consuming process. And so we've created some tools that will really help you to streamline this and take away some of the manual work here. Okay, so I'm going to go back into categories and talk a little bit more about the groupings here and how you might want to add some additional ones, right? So if I wanted to adjust my categories, I see we've got the living category here and then kids falls under that, but maybe I want to get more granular with where my money as it pertains to my children are going. So maybe I want to make a group that's kids. And then underneath that could be the different types of expenses. So maybe I've got daycare, I could have school supplies, I could have, we could say entertainment. And so you'll see all of these different more granular things under kids that I can have. Now, these are going to get automatically highlighted yellow because you need to have a group for each one. So I'm going to go ahead and apply. And all of these are going to be categorized as expenses. So that's one thing where you might want to have a little bit more of a granular view. Another thing would be, utilities and bills. Maybe I wanted to have a separate category under utilities specific to my phone bill, my internet bill, water, electricity. So really, again, it's totally up to you and how you want to structure this to make the most sense for viewing where your money's going. One thing to keep in mind here is that every category has to be unique. So that's why I added kids to the end of this one. If you double it up, then it'll give you a warning. So for example, if I wanted to add education, I'll do that. And it's going to highlight both. And so just to keep everything simple and working, you do want every single category to be unique. So I'll just go ahead and add kids there. And so that's how you can manage that. Okay. So once I've kind of gone through my category sheet and I've made the changes that make the most sense for me and for my transactions, now we can kind of go and see how we can automatically apply some of that to the transaction sheet. So again, you can go through and add each one individually, but you don't have to. So we do have this tool called AutoCat. I've already populated some things in here, but AutoCAD is basically a way to apply rules to that categories column and automatically set it for you. So you can see here, you can categorize based on a description, what the account contains, what the institution contains, and even amounts of the transactions. So you can use all of these rules to apply. So for example, if I come into my transactions template and I see in the transaction description here, we can say, I see Amazon here. So I would maybe want to categorize that automatically as shopping. So if I come over here, what I would do is add my category. We'll say shopping, and then I can simply type in Target, and then that's going to search any transaction description for Target, and it'll apply it. Whoops, I put the wrong category there. There we go. Looking in here as well, maybe we see rent check. I've got a New York Times subscription, so we can come in here. I've already categorized my rent check, but let's do subscriptions, and then we'll do New York Times. And again, it's going to search the description for anything that matches. So you do want to be fairly specific. For example, if I wanted to do my paycheck and I just put the word pay, that could pull in a lot of different transactions because sometimes when you pay a credit card, it'll say payment in the description. And so for me, I've set it to say Gusto because that's my payroll processor. And I know that in the description, when I receive a pay, it's going to say Gusto and not paycheck, just to make it as easy as possible and as specific as possible. Okay. So once we set some of these things, I'll go ahead and add a couple of more here. We can do maybe under transportation. I could say like for the gas station, if I know what gas station names I'm typically using, I can add it to the description there. And then I'm going to come back into my transactions sheet and we'll apply this. So we see the ones that we've manually applied, but I'm now going to use the Tiller Money Feeds add-in to run the AutoCat to actually apply it. So if you don't have it yet, we've got this great extension. It's called Tiller Money Feeds. If you haven't added it to your Google Sheets yet, just click on extensions, add-ons, get add-ons, and then you'll be able to search Tiller Money Feeds and you'll be able to add it. I've already got it installed here. So I'm going to come down to Tiller Money Feeds and then click launch. And it's going to open up on the right-hand side as a sidebar for me. It takes a couple of seconds to think, but you can see that coming up here. And once we have the Tiller Money Feed sidebar launched, we'll be able to do a bunch of different things for our spreadsheet, but specifically right here, we'll be able to run our AutoCat. Okay. So when you first open it up, it's going to check for updates. I shouldn't have any because this is a manual account. And so then I'm going to see this option here to run AutoCat. So if I click run AutoCat, it's going to basically work to fill in anything that matches those rules. So we can see here, we start to see more categories get populated here. So we see, my rent check was applied as housing. We come down here, we see groceries was applied, groceries. As I mentioned, my payroll processor is Gusto. So that matched up and we see that. And again, it's not going to apply to anything that we don't have a rule for. So we don't have anything under that matches to Airbnb. But if I wanted to come into AutoCat and maybe add that as travel, we can do that. So if I go Airbnb in the description, come back to categories, and then we can run AutoCat again. That will fill that in. So you can see that populate automatically. So if we scroll down to where the Airbnb was, now we see that that's been populated with travel. So you do need to run the AutoCat in order to apply your changes to your data. But you can see how easy it is once you sort of set those automated categories, how quick it can be to just apply this to the categories in your transactions template. So, what does it mean after we start categorizing our transactions? Well, if I head back into my spending trends, now you see a lot more information, right? So you see that, and I've got this set for 2025, so it's looking at last year. So you'll see that because I categorized my paychecks as income, that's now showing up here, showing that amount. If you come down here, you can see we've categorized some travel, we've categorized some restaurants, some shopping, groceries. So all of these things that we just went through and categorized are now giving us insights into our spending for the year. The spending trend sheet is a really great place to get a high level snapshot, and you can choose the date range that you're looking at. So I can update this and take a look at the past 30 days, for example. And that's going to show me all of the things that have happened in the last month. It's also going to show me how much I still need to categorize. So in my transaction sheet, looking at the last 30 days, there's a bunch of things here that I haven't updated yet. So if I come in here, this is for the mechanic. So if I come in here and add that to transportation, that'll help. This one was home improvement from the building store. Amazon here, we can do for shopping. So again, you can keep categorizing it. And then when I come back to spending trends, you'll see the needs categorization has decreased. And then the amounts that we have here, especially under transportation where we had that mechanic bill, you can see that that's automatically reflected in your spending trends. So categorization is absolutely necessary in terms of being able to really see what it is we're doing in Tiller in our financial life and to have all the insights that you need to understand where your money's going. So if I go back into the transactions tab, a really common question that we get often is, if I shop at a department store, for example, and I spend some of my money on groceries, but some of it's just on shopping, and maybe I also went to the pharmacy there, how do I manage that? And so that is something that you do within the Tiller Money Feed sidebar as well. So if I come down here, let's try to find a larger dollar amount so we can split it up really well. But let's say we go here and let's say this was at a department store and we've got a couple of different classifications that we want to categorize this as. So what we'll do is click on the amount and then we'll come into the sidebar and click on split. And it's going to give us the option to break this down into as many categories as we need. So let's say for part of this was for groceries. So let's say I spent 200 of this on groceries, then I'll add the split, and then the remainder is going to be below. Let's say some of that, I picked up some medication, so we can go to medical and dental. I'll say that was 75. If I click add split, it's going to give me, again, the remainder. So we're going to total up to that value, but it's splitting it up nicely so that we know exactly how much was spent where. So for this remainder, let's say I'm just going to set that as shopping, and I'll click split transaction to finalize it. And then if we keep an eye out here in our spreadsheet, you'll see it's going to split that into 3, each categorized with the correct amount. So that's a really easy way for you to, again, get more clarity into your spending, even if you've got different categories of spending in the same purchase on the same receipt. You can go ahead and update that as needed. One of the things that we hear about a lot for folks who are just setting up their accounts is the budget tab. So they notice in their budgets that they are blank and in the categories template. And so this is to be expected. These are going to be blank because they are where you set your budgets and not where you actually set your spending. So your actual spending doesn't pull in here, just your budgets are going to show up. And so this is where you'll manually actually go in and update each of your budgets to show up in so that you can see where your spending is going. So if I come into my budgets here, I'm going to take a look at my December 2025 budget. So we can see here, because this is in the previous year, I haven't actually set a budget, but you can see, because I've pulled in historical transactions, that I do have some spending here. So now what we'll do is go ahead and set some of our budgets for the year ahead. So I'm going to come into this month. So we'll go January 2026. And again, we see our actual spending and our available spending, but no budgets. So let's take a look at how we're going to set that. So if we come into categories, basically you're just going to set your budget for each month in here. And again, next week, we're going to do a deep dive into setting budgets and how that works. But for the purposes of today, to see how categories affect the way that your budgets are displayed, let's take a look here. So let's say I'm expecting $5,000 per month paycheck. Once you enter it for the first month, it'll carry over to the future months. You can make adjustments for each month, but if it's the same amount going forward, just enter it in January and it'll automatically carry through. So we can say that if I come down to housing, let's say that I have a $750 rent bill. We can say for kids, maybe under daycare, I'm expecting, let's say, 360 per month in daycare there. Groceries, let's say 250. So again, just kind of setting some things here so that we can see what we're spending on as it pertains to the budgets. So we've set up a couple of things here, and now I'm going to go back into my monthly budget. And now we can actually see what's going on here a little bit. So what this is showing here is that I got a little bit of income from interest, but I haven't received a paycheck yet. So I'm going to be in the negative for that until I have that paycheck transaction come through. If I come down into my expenses, now we can kind of see what I'm spending on. So I set that I wanted to only spend 150 at restaurants, and I've spent 43 based on what I've categorized, which gives me some available room of 106.50. I didn't set a budget for shopping, and I've spent 137, so that's going to show up in the red for me, and so on. So you can kind of see if you don't set a budget in the categories template, or you don't categorize something, it's not going to show up correctly in this sheet. So again, super, super important here that we set that up. Coming down here, I can see that I've set my budget for daycare at 360, and I haven't spent any of it. But if I come into my transactions tab, I should actually have this here. So for childcare, but I haven't categorized it. So it's not coming into my budget, even though the transaction exists and the description is clear. So I need to categorize this. And again, I had that under daycare. And now when I come back into my monthly budget, and take a look here, you can see that I've budgeted 360, I paid 360, and I have no remaining budget for that particular purchase type. So you can kind of start to see, once you're updating your categories and seeing it flow into these other sheets, especially the budgets, you can really understand how important it is to get these categories right so that you can really see where your money's going. One of the cool things about leaving this up to you and giving you the full control is that there are so many different ways to actually set up your categories. And we get questions all the time about, what are the best ways to do my categories? And there's a really good community post about this that I would highly encourage everybody to look at. And I'll link to this as well. But this is a really cool community post from a few years ago that still gets comments and updates that really just kind of deep dives into how other people are doing it. So again, we give you those default categories and groups, but these are some other ideas that might resonate more with, your own financial needs or your own goals with tracking your money. So this person put in the different ways that they group things. So around home, they've got their mortgage here, but also things like their cleaning service and maintenance, and, furniture. Under utilities, they've split those all out into the different categories there. for their car as well. They don't just have, transportation as a living group. They have auto as a group, and then all of these categories underneath that kind of fall into that bucket. Again, if you wanted to really break down the different ways that you spend on food and drink, you can absolutely do that. So a lot of folks will separate groceries from restaurants, from coffee and tea. So again, the sky's the limit really in terms of how you want to set this up. The important thing is that it makes sense for your own needs. And yeah, so I would definitely recommend poking around in this conversation in the community, because you really get some insights into the way that people are spending. One of the things that you'll see is there's some differences in the way that people will track expenses if they own a home versus rent, if they have children versus are empty nesters or child free, if they have pets or not. I know that there's one in here, they have a boat, so they've got a whole group around boat expenses and docking fees and fuel for that that's separate from their other transportation. So a really cool way to engage with the community, get some ideas, and really, take the pieces that work for you and make them your own when it comes to your spreadsheets here. So before we finish up the demo, I did want to go over a couple of frequently asked questions that we get quite often. The first one being, how many categories or groups can I have? So the foundation template can support up to 200 unique categories and then 20 unique groups. So you do want to keep it within those constraints. If you go over that, it does tend to get a little bit messier and a little bit less clear. So it is one of those things where you do want to stick to under those amounts. I went over this already, but again, why is everything set to 0 in the category sheet? And that's because that's where you set your budgets, but not where the actual spending is going to appear. Transfer type is something that we get questions about quite a bit. And again, I will include a link to a resource about this, but transfers are basically meant to help you see when you're tracking or when you're moving money from one account to another. And the one thing to keep in mind with the transfer types is that they don't appear in your budget dashboards or affect your cash flow calculations. So if you come into spending trends, you'll notice here that we have income and expenses listed here, but transfers don't show up there. So if you're wondering where that category goes, it's going to show up in your transactions history, but it's not going to show up in your budgets or in your spending trends overview. And then lastly, we do have a lot of folks who ask about subcategories. And so in some other apps, you would use category the way that we use group, and then subcategory the way we use categories. What you want to think about in this case is that your categories in this first column are going to be the most granular. So you can view those as subcategories, because those are really going to be sort of the smallest that you go when it comes to looking at that. And then groups are those broader umbrellas where multiple category types are going to fall into. So just a little bit of a different language around it, but same idea, just viewing category as subcategory and group as the parent category there. So that brings us to the end of the demo portion. I do want to highlight just our support team. If you have any questions that are specific to your account, or just want to be pointed in the right direction as it pertains to your account and getting set up, please shoot us an email, support@tiller.com, or in your Tiller console, you'll also see a little chat bubble. If you click on that, it'll show you help articles, as well as give you a link to chat with our team and get answers to your questions that way. Thank you so much for watching.